डॉक्टर शुभदा जोशी हैं, जो प्रोफेसर रही हैं डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ फिलोसफी की यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ मुंबई की। तो मेरा अनुरोध है कि वे आ जाएं मंच पे। उसके बाद डॉक्टर पुष्पा नीलकंठन, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ फिलोसफी यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ मुंबई, उनसे भी मेरा अनुरोध है कि वो भी ऊपर आ जाएं, मंच पे अपना स्थान ग्रहण करें। फिर डॉक्टर ललिता नाम जोशी, संस्कृत प्रीतम सोमैया विद्या विहार मुंबई, इनसे भी मेरा अनुरोध है कि वे ऊपर आ जाएं। डॉक्टर माधवी, डिपार्टमेंट नर्सिलाई, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ संस्कृत यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ मुंबई, उनसे भी मेरा अनुरोध है कि वो आ जाएं अगर वो आ गई हैं। फिर चारों लोग तो मुंबई से हैं, जैसे आपको पता ही है मुंबई ने इस पूरी इवेंट को छाया हुआ है। मुंबई हाईजैक तो नहीं कहूंगा मैं, तो इसके लिए विशेष तालियां। और चारों महिलाएं सेशन की, और अभी तक जिनके नाम मैंने निमंत्रित किए, इस बात के लिए भी आप तालियां बजा सकते हैं। और फिर हमारे अपने पंजाब यूनिवर्सिटी के प्रोफेसर रौनकी राम जी, जो डायरेक्टर हैं नॉर्थ वेस्ट रीजन के ICSSR के, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ पॉलिटिकल साइंस के प्रोफेसर हैं, डीन आर्ट्स हैं, बहुत कुछ है, हम ऑलराउंडर कहते हैं, और पॉलिटिकल साइंस के बेसिकली ये विद्वान हैं। और उसके बाद एक नाम और है मेरे पास। देखिए ये लिस्ट बड़ी लंबी थी और मुझे टेंशन हो रही थी कि भाई पिछली बार 7 लोग थे और इसको भी सेशन को हम 1.5 घंटे में वाइंड अप करना चाहते हैं, 2 बजे से तो पहले हराल में, जिससे आपको प्रतीक्षा ना करनी पड़े लंच के लिए और उसके बाद नेक्स्ट सेशन के लिए। क्योंकि नेक्स्ट सेशन में आपको मालूम है कि जो पतंजलि आयुर्वेद के चेयरमैन है और MD हैं आचार्य बालकृष्ण जी, वो आ रहे हैं, संभवतः उनको भी आप सुनने में ज्यादा इच्छुक होंगे। तो कुछ नाम इसमें से जो हमारे पास 9 थे उनमें से अभी नहीं आए हैं, या तो ऐसा पता लगा है कि शायद 1-2 लोग उपलब्ध नहीं है। तो अभी मेरे पास एक नाम और है, प्रोफेसर विक्रम जोशी, अगर वो आ गए हैं तो नवोदय विद्यालय से हैं, वो भी नहीं आ रहे हैं। तो देखिए अपने आप लोग कम हो रहे हैं। और प्रोफेसर संजय कौशिक भी मुझे दिख नहीं रहे, क्योंकि वो भी हमारे PU से वो भी नहीं दिख रहे। हाँ जी, तो ये अच्छी बात है, हमारे अकेले रौनकी राम जी काफी पंजाब यूनिवर्सिटी से, तो ये संभाल लेंगे, ऐसी कोई बात नहीं है। और एक हमारे और जो कल कंडक्ट कर रहे थे फंक्शन को, राधा कृष्ण पिल्लई जी, अगेन बम्बई से, उनके बारे में मुझे ये बताया गया है कि वो अभी व्यस्त है, वो थोड़ी देर में लेकिन आएंगे और अपनी बात रखेंगे। तो एक मैं और बात आपसे अनुरोध बस करना चाहूंगा, इससे पहले कि मैं प्रोफेसर शुभदा जी को हैंड ओवर करूं प्रोसीडिंग को, कि मैंने एक चीज ऑब्जर्व करी थी कि प्रोफेसर शुभदा जोशी, मैं उन्हें पहले से नहीं जानता, लेकिन फर्स्ट सेशन में मैं इतना भाप गया हूँ कि वो जितने यहाँ बम्बई के लोग बैठे सबकी गुरु हैं, क्योंकि ज्यादातर लोगों के इसमें तो उनके साथ PhD की है, और जो व्यक्ति PhD करता है जिसके साथ, ये रौनकी राम जी या और जो लोग हैं वो समझते हैं, उसका टेरर जिंदगी भर रहता है। मतलब जो को इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि इस सेशन में हमें, जो जनाब ने कहा था, मोहब्बत नामे भेजने की जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ेगी, 4 लोग मुंबई से इकट्ठे आए। और आई होप कि अगर यही स्थिति है तो हम 1:30 बजे, जो हमारा ओरिजिनल लंच का टाइम है, उसमें कर लेंगे। तो शुभदा जी से बस इतना ही अनुरोध है कि वो चेहरे से बहुत क्यूट लग रहे हैं, पर थोड़ा सख्त रहें, और 10 मिनट का जो टाइम है उसी में आप खत्म करें, बाकी अधिकार आपके। मैं केवल अनुरोध कर रहा हूँ कि हम 1:30 बजे तक अगर खत्म कर पाए तो हम सभी लंच अच्छे से कर पाएंगे, और फिर अगले सेशन के लिए भी हम समय से उसको भी शुरू कर पाएंगे, क्योंकि उसमें आचार्य बालकृष्ण जो है उन्होंने बाहर से आना है, तो उनको हमें ये सोचना चाहिए कि उन्हें इंतजार ना करना। तो इसलिए मैं अब और समय ना लेते हुए प्रोफेसर शुभदा जोशी जी को अनुरोध करूंगा कि वो आगे की कार्यवाही का संचालन करें, और 1:30 बजे के मेरे अनुरोध को जरूर अमली जामा पहनाने की कोशिश करें।
Good afternoon, everybody. At the outset, I express my sincere thanks towards Chandigarh administration, also to Punjab University, and two other organizational institutions, Center for Institution Building and Leadership, and Department of Ayush, for not only giving me opportunity but thinking of this particular academic activity as a part of Yoga Festival. And especially these three institutions from Chandigarh administration, Punjab University and Ayush Chandigarh administration, because any event happening in a particular location, local people have to really work very hard. People coming from outside, they come here and they enjoy the hospitality extended to them. So we also express our thanks, sincere thanks for very kind and caring hospitality extended to us and every help extended to us by the colleagues, the resource persons and the volunteers from these institutions. Thank you very much. Yoga is really something which tells us to unite. And doing such endeavors also, if we learn to unite, well, that also is one step in creating harmony, in understanding and enriching understanding of each other. Friends, in this particular session, earlier there were 9 presentations, but due to some change in the timetable, 2 scholars are unable to make their presentations. So there will be 7 presentations in all. I feel little relieved, not because the 2 scholars are not here. Yesterday, I saw the miserable plight of Dr. Gauri Mahulikar managing 9 scholars in the panel. And the whole night, I kept on imagining that how my session I will be handling with 9 presentations. Of course, the choice was for me being a mere spectator, Sakshi Bhav. Now I think I will get some opportunity to say something, but I will use that at the end. Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai also is busy somewhere and therefore he also will join later. So let us begin our session with the presentation of Dr. Pushpa Neelakanthan, Yoga and Stress Management. Dr. Pushpa Neelakanthan is our yoga teacher and coordinator, handling our certificate diploma courses as well as our practicals of master's level students for almost more than 15 years. So, Dr. Pushpa Neelakanthan.
Thank the organizers and also the chairperson, who is my very dear teacher, and all the expert panelists and all assembled here. My topic is yoga and stress management, and I will base my entire reflections on this yoga system of Patanjali, drawing essential features of stress there and its management. That's how I'll be going about.
I just forgot to mention it, that you will be given 10 minutes, 8 minutes and 2 minutes, please.
Sure. Yeah, I will try and complete my presentation in 10 minutes. Thank you, madam. I am going to, as I said, base this entire discussion on the Patanjali Yoga system. So first, I would like to draw your attention to the indicators and pointers of stress in the yoga system of Patanjali. And there I find 3 distinct features: the dualistic metaphysics. Here I feel there is the spiritual dimension and there is also the psychophysiological dimension. So the fear is, from the context of stress, I would say that there could be a short-sightedness of that dimension and we may be not be able to perceive it. Therefore, that could be one of the reasons of stress. And another important feature of this dualistic metaphysics is, we all know it is Prakriti and Purusha, we all know it is the spiritual and the material. and its union, its apparent union, its alliance, and therefore we can look for some problems here. From the dualistic metaphysics, we come to the next point, the 24 evolutes, and which can give us this beautiful concept of the multi-dimensional person, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual being. This is another important point I would try to stress in my this thing. And here again, I would like to see the source of stress lies here in the lopsided or short-sighted approach. We may not see subtle dimensions of our person. This is one important point I will be raising in my subsequent slides. The philosophy of three gunas. We can say that the three gunas can actually explain the psychophysiological person that we are, and it can even explain the traits, dispositions, habits, and attitudes. The philosophy of three gunas, and therefore there are beautiful statements by Vyasa which says chitta hi trigunam shanta gora muda pravritti, or it says chitta, it even says that chitta gunas dukkha swabhava. Its swabhava itself is pain. So these certain features we will have to examine to say how these three gunas can be a contributing factor in the discussion of stress according to the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And besides, these three gunas only it's going to become the management also, because they are beautiful scales for evaluation and self-awareness. I am Rajasic, I am Tamasic, I am Sattvic. This awareness, and there is a beautiful self-actualization process through Sattva Chutti in yoga, through the practices. That also we will examine, and we will be able to see that this also will give us certain answers for our management of stress. Now, certain features of stress, gunas can also give us certain features of stress. So the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, Sadhana Pada Sutra 50, please if I am getting into too much philosophy, but I'll try and make it interesting. So there are certain features like parinama, anything that is changeful is stressful. So gunas, because of its composition, because of its predominant state, its subordinate state, it is quite likely that it can give us some stressful position. Then tapa, acute anxiety and suffering. That is also another feature of the three gunas. Then samskara, afflictive tendency, that which is recurring and unresolved state of gunas. So here we will have to talk about, we can say that this afflictive tendency is something, there is something which we cannot see, the continuity. Something, and I think that is the extreme source of stress. I recently attended a discourse, and that person who was talking made a very interesting discussion. He said, there is somebody who is doing and somebody who is suffering. That means we are not able to see the continuity when we talk of sanskara, and that also has its base on the three gunas. Then the dukkha, of course, the threefold pain is talked about in many philosophical systems, and the vritti virodha, the opposition or the conflicting state of three gunas. So they form they can define stress, they can be the cause of stress. This very beautiful sutra. There is one more statement which continues here, which I will be taking it as my management statement. Factors of stress, another important, not much to be spoken, the panchakleshas, which we always talk about as existential stresses. The core stress factors are attachment and repulsion, and I took them because it is very relevant to our modern lifestyle and living. And more important, what kind of things that can come out of it. It manifests in repressed anger, worry, resentment, materially and sensually motivated all the time. So Vyasa says, Vishaya Priyam, Aishwarya Priyam. He talks about this. We can see a lifestyle in this. We can see a lifestyle when he talks about Rajas, the concept of Rajas, the Rajas Guna. He says, Vishaya Priyam, Aishwarya Priyam. You are constantly, and that what happened, there can be a lingering signs of dependency. When you are constantly in this state, there can be dependency, and it can lead to indulgences. And when there are indulgences, we can, to escape, we may even go to certain addictions. Possibility, there is a chain, there is a kind of continuity here. Then egoistic affirmations of likes and dislikes, and manipulation and selfish competition, and I, me, mine attitude. This springs from the Panchakleshas. Panchakleshas are not that easy philosophy, but they are in some way. When I was looking at this, I saw they were beautiful structures of stress. They are beautiful structures of stress. And again, klesha, karma, they say that. So therefore, this also has source in samskara and cannot be resolved that easily. They are recurring. They are constantly recurring. So that's the Panchakleshas. And then there is one beautiful, interesting, the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali talks about obstacles to the practice of yoga. And here the Chitta Vikshepa and Chitta Vikshepa Sahabhuva, they are the two factors. So there are 9 adversaries of yoga. But I personally feel illness, idleness, laziness are also trying, somehow they rob the optimum living. And I think that when we are not able to optimize, there is stress. Definitely there is stress. And in that way, I would like to see that this point of view. And most important, when I talk about Vikshepa Sahabhuva, I think all stress related ailments can come here. Grief, negative attitude. So you can say neuromuscular, poor neuromuscular coordination, shakiness of limbs. See, I'm not from the medical background, but a little I understand. Then irregular breathing, the cardio problems, or you can say grief, some type of depression, a marginal depression, or even more. It depends. It all depends how you want to interpret. So the clinical, the medical, and the scientific analysis can come here. So I think the study of the Chitta Sahabhuva gives a scope for a lot of multidisciplinary approach while we are going to learn stress and its management. And here we can bring the point of the yoga concept of holistic well-being. The holistic well-being, because we have to understand why stress. Because stress, in the very first slide I said stress is inevitable, no doubt. It is there. There is a core pattern and a core structure. This I pointed out to you in my first, so we will have to find some answers there. And the management of stress. The Sadhana Pada says, makes a management, dukkam evam sarvam vivekam. A beautiful, I always like this statement, I always reflect on this statement. It says, there is no certainty and finality that pleasure is long lasting. Pleasure is always mixed with pain. Pleasure is pain in the end. They give us beautiful reflection modules. They are all beautiful reflection modules. So we can give it, so it's an education. I think this statement is an education, and how to come out of this, how do we do this? So then there are 2 methods, psychophysiological regulation and ethico-spiritual training. So here, this is my area, I teach practice only. I teach practical, so this is my area and I'm more comfortable from now on I'm very comfortable. So the Ashtavidhi Angas, the applied components of yoga, the practicals, a standard procedure which can give positive change in the overall health, cognitive task and interpersonal relation. This is assured, rather assured. Anybody who's doing yoga in this room, we know how it makes a favorable change in these areas. And the key features of body-mind philosophy, but the most important thing is, it assures mental well-being. Even when you do a simple stretch, well-being is assured. There I have taken 2 concepts, Manavishranti and Manomaya. It is seen in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, these 2 words are used. Manavishranti in relation to asana and Manomaya in relation to pranayama. Manavishranti means the calming of mind, and Manomaya means a state of mind devoid of thoughts, which is sure after doing any simple regulation of breath. And the most important point I would like to make is, there is the merit of effort and willpower here. And I think that is the beautiful concept. And I think this is the crux of yoga education. We will manage stress. Let there be the emphasis on yoga education through yoga. But we will manage stress anyway. So the merit of willpower and stress, I think that's important. So everything becomes very willful and skillful. And I think it gives a lot of independence, and it respects human person. I think that's most important in education, especially when today we are thinking this program itself is trying to show how to take yoga to mainstream education, and that time I think these features have to be seen and recognized. Ethico-spiritual thinking, this is the bhavana, and here I have done much work on this for the last 20 years in the Department of Philosophy while teaching. So we have developed a lot of feedback mechanism and all that. And then what is bhavana? Bhavana is the method of subtle transformation of mind by autosuggestion. So what is it? It is like the mind watching itself or thought watching its own movements. So that's it. So what do we do? This through bhavana, what we do? We do some replacement. The negative by positive, so many things. So the bhavanas are very useful tools of transformation, and if you look at the whole approach, it is very gentle, very subtle, because everything is self-initiated. Nobody tells you, come on now, from tomorrow onwards, don't get angry. It's a negative thing. Everywhere you are asked to become aware. You are aware that there is a negative emotion. As and when you can, you replace it by a positive. Then rely on the strength. The last slide of mine will talk about that strength. Rely on that strength. Slowly, as if you can see that, just like when we mix the two, and you want to, if you want in the tea, the flavor of milk more than the flavor of tea, you mix it that way. Then that way you make that taste predominant. Therefore, you get the positive very predominant. And there are a few such bhavana. 2 minutes, madam. Just so Pratipaksha bhavana, where when you, it is in relation to developing virtues like Yama Niyama. Earlier speaker already spoke about it. Imani spoke about it. Pratipaksha bhavana in relation to developing the ethical value virtue model. Anitya bhavana, where you have to perceive change. We saw parinama as one of the stumbling blocks of stress. And Anitya bhavana, then Chitta Prasadana bhavana, we'll have to develop virtues like Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. And therefore what happens when Vyasa says Shuklo Dharma, it can develop, it can remove the stains and blemishes of the mind. Because how you see, when I feel jealous for a very happy and contented person, let me develop friendship towards him. When I see a person in distress, let me have compassion. Similarly, so many traits, so many virtues are encouraged. And then what happens? The mind becomes pleasant. Prasadana means pleasant, serene, calm, and we need that. And therefore, this removes, and I think most of our problem is crops in the mind alone. And that's how it is. And Artha Japa Bhavana, I'll take 1 minute, then I'll take one minute for my next slides. Artha Japa Bhavana, again, it is Omkara Japa. It is reciting a particular word which can calm you, Artha Japa Bhavana. Yeah, madam, I'll finish, madam. So, Artha Japa Bhavana in relation to Ishvara Pranidhana. And here I would like to take just 1 minute for both my slides. I like the terms Chittanadi, Pravaha and Prashanta Vahita. And here I will use these 3 terms to develop the methodology of how yoga works on a person. Very subtle, creative, spontaneous, no force. An individual is so much respected. So very innovative and creative. So mind is like a river, flows in a direction, Papa and Kalyana. And we have to constantly see this flow and also become aware of that, at times, of the balanced state of mind. All are this thing to awareness. Some points for reflection in where yoga is now going to come into mainstream. Cultism, groupism, are we followers or creative thinkers? This is one question. Often it troubles me. Should we discuss or just accept? Shed pillows or shed ego? Something outside or inside? And attitude is the state of being, becoming. I would like to talk about Tat Sannidho. So like the governor spoke about yesterday, let us become a person of an aura, of a magnetic aura, where in our presence many things will resolve. So I think yoga, we need to develop that. And Bala, let us develop the strength. In yoga we talk about Hasti Shubalani Hasti, Maitri Shubalani Maitri. Let that be the strength of our mind. Sorry madam for taking some extra time. Thank you so much for the patience.
Thank you, Dr. Pushpa. I know there are quite a few things which you could have easily shared with the audience, but those who are inquisitive, if they feel like, they can anytime have discussion with her. I won't take time in summarizing what she has already said because the audience is learned enough to understand what she has already said. Of course, I will say that she gave a nice analysis of causes of stress and also what methods or whichever techniques which can be used for de-stressing oneself. I now request Dr. Lalita Namjoshi to give her presentation. She retired as a Deputy Director for Sanskriti Peetham Somaiya Vidya Vihar, and a very scholarly person who equally is comfortable in Sanskrit literature and philosophy, because her PhD thesis is on Brahma Sutras, and she is not only well versed in Sanskrit but equally eloquent in philosophy.
Dr. Kind introduction. At the outset, I thank Chandigarh administration and other organizers of this great event. What I had planned to speak was about yoga and interpersonal relationships at workplace. Now, what happened is that my task has been made easier by some of the speakers who spoke yesterday, then Himani madam who spoke in the morning, and Pushpa madam who spoke just before me. So it is an easier task and it will take very little time for me to convey whatever I want to convey.
Take 10 minutes.
Interpersonal relationships are very important for peace, productivity, prosperity and harmony in all walks of life. But actually, what are interpersonal relationships? It is a strong, deep or close association or acquaintance between two or more people that may range in duration, from brief to enduring. This association may be based on inference, love, solidarity, regular business interactions, or some other types of social commitment. Interpersonal relationships are found in the context of social, cultural, and other influences. The context can vary from family to kinship relationship, friendship, marriage, relation with associates, workplace, clubs, neighborhoods, and even places of worship. They may be regulated by law, by custom, or by mutual agreement, and are the basis of social groups and society as a whole. Now, interpersonal relationships at workplace matter a lot, because those relationships at workplace have many possibilities of conflict, aggression, non-cooperation, personal stress, and counterproductive work behavior. On part of the ground level of employees, so the counterproductive behavior will be on the part of ground level employees and oppressive policies on part of higher authorities. So both the levels, both the strata of workplace are to be considered in this regard. Now, what can be called a workplace? Again, a workplace primarily will be an organization, a professional agency, industry, or a formal institution. However, even a household can be a workplace for the servants or domestic helps and the service providers who visit our household. So, workplace is a very broad concept. And then again, even cultural and religious organizations can also have the interpersonal relationship problems, though they are not in the strict sense workplace or industries or societies like that. So, these organizations are also susceptible to the conflict at workplace. Organizational conflict or workplace conflict is described as a state of discord used by the actual or perceived opposition of needs, values, and interests between people working together. The conflict may take many forms to become manifest. There is the inevitable clash between formal authority and power and those individuals or groups working under them. There is always a tension between the boss and the employees. between the head of the department and the people working under him, between the vice chancellor and all colleges and universities, between the minister and the people working under him in all fields of life. The boss and the people working under him are always in a state of strain and tension. Then there are individual clashes between among the group also, between the bosses, between the managing directors, vice presidents, and between the employees. There may be disputes over the division of revenue, how the earnings, how the profit should be shared, about the manner in which the goal is to be achieved, means the end justifies the means, or the good means and good ends. That kind of clash also is there, and how the workload is to be shared to meet the targets. So many angles of workplace conflicts do exist. There are subtle forms of conflict involving rivalries, jealousies, personality clashes, role definitions, struggle for power and favor. On individual level, there are conflicts between competing needs and demands, then between personal goals and organizational targets, thus leading to stress affecting the efficiency of the person. Three major types of conflict can be cited as personal conflict, intra-group conflict, and inter-group conflict. I won't go in the details of this. But conflict-induced stress in the workplace today is a major concern and consideration for all stakeholders involved. And anything that can be introduced to alleviate this stressfulness or stress is of potential benefit to both the employees and the employers. Less stressful employees will be more productive and are less likely to need time off through illness. Less stressful employees are likely to have happier home lives, and thus in turn it will lead to the rise in productivity. So there are many theories in this area. I have touched upon Maslow's period of pyramid of needs, and motivation and self-actualization, about which we had earlier references. I will omit that, and I will come to our present context. In the Indian context, yoga comes as a great means to alleviate the conflict and the stress at workplace. In the morning session, Dr. Agrawal mentioned that yoga has become a great business. One of the businessmen who imported yoga mats to UK, David Elliott, the managing director of the MAD Group, he calls it MAD Group, and he provides equipment, yoga equipment. He vouchsafes the benefits of yoga in one of his articles. And he says that yoga at workplace can deal successfully with stress and anxiety. He says that it can create inner peace, calm and presence, weight management, flexibility, managing pain and improving breathing. That is what he says. He has tried it at workplace, so he says that. A number of experiments have been conducted to establish the efficacy and effectiveness of yoga intervention in different
2 minutes more.
In different organizations, and their findings are published. One of the experiment was conducted by Dr. H.R. Nagendra, and he offered a yoga module and some literary guidance, and it was conducted for 10 weeks, and it helped in reducing the counterproductive work behavior of the employees in that particular organization. He has published 2 articles based on his experiment in this area and how yoga could help to reduce the friction and tension. Now, after reading, there is an experiment which is conducted, though jail cannot be called a workplace as such, but in jail, in an adverse condition like jail, yoga intervention was used to reduce the destructivity, the negative impulses and violence. We know the experiment of Tihar jail by Kiran Bedi ji, and one more experiment was conducted by Ghantali Yoga Mandir, Thane, Maharashtra, way back in Thane Central Jail. And Oxford University also has conducted a study of yoga influences on prisoners, and they have also found very positive results. Now when we go through all these experiments, I find that all these experiments concentrated more on asana, pranayama and a little bit of meditation. But what Pushpa ji elucidated before me, I have explained all this concept of Pratipaksha Bhavana and Chitta Prasadana. I don't have time to explain this, but Pratipaksha Bhavana, I think that we have not used as a tool. We have used as Maitri Karuna Mudita, but what Patanjali says, Vitarka Badhane Pratipaksha Bhavanam, that we have not properly used in the yoga techniques that we employ to reduce the tension and counterproductive behavior of the employees. We have to use that Pratipaksha Bhavanam. And Pratipaksha Bhavanam we use in informal ways in our household relations or in small classrooms. For example, when a child is very much afraid to go in the dark room, we try to instill fearlessness in that child. We don't put on the light and ask the child to go, but we want to make that child fearless and conquer the fear of dark and enter that room. Or in the classroom, when two students have a fight, the teacher asks them to shake hands or hug each other. That is replacing animosity with amity, with friendship. That is Pratipaksha Bhavanam. So all negative feelings that are there in the employees or in the management are to be replaced by positiveness. Again, Maitri Karuna Mudita also is to be introduced in these yoga interventions, where the employees, I particularly want to speak 2 lines about only Upeksha, because the next speaker will be speaking about Chitta Prasadana, I know that. But Upeksha, when we see in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, that Upeksha for Apunya means sinful activities we have to be indifferent. Then the question comes to our mind, then how the sinful activities will stop? Aren't we supposed to counter them? But Patanjali speaks for your own personal good, and he says that the sinful activities should be treated with indifference, because sometimes they induce a tendency amongst us that if a sinful person is prospering, if a sinful person is not any way punished, then why not? Why not? If a person can travel in first class without buying a ticket in a suburban train, why should I spend money to buy pass and pay so much for the first class travel? These kinds of attractions are there always for apunya, because evil is always attractive. So I remember when Ramayana serial was going on, when Ravan came, all the children playing outside would come in and wait for the sentence, Use Shri Mat Kaho. So they were attracted, and when Ram started speaking, they would go out to play. So evil is attractive. That's why apunya is to be treated with indifference, and that we have to teach the employees. And the yoga interventions presently, 2 lines, concentrate on the employees, but as we saw the example of an entrepreneur who himself is benefited by yoga, we have to introduce the yoga intervention and cultivation of Pratipaksha Bhavana and Chitta Prasadana for the higher hierarchy of management, and the bosses also have to be trained in this, so that workplace relationships are better and harmonious, and we can prosper with the help of yoga. Thank you very much for explaining.
Thank you, Dr. Lalita Namjoshi. I'm sure that she will have this Upeksha Bhavana towards me for restraining her speech, because I'm given this task of apunya. Now I request another colleague of mine, Dr. Madhavi Narsade, Head Department of Sanskrit, a very dynamic personality, my young friend, colleague. She is trying to establish some new dimensions and activities in the Department of Sanskrit. So, Dr. Madhavi Narsade.
I thank Chandigarh administration Dr. Shubhra Joshi and Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai for inviting me to this Yoga Fest. Respected ladies and gentlemen, the title of my paper is Yoga at Workplace. Yoga is not an armchair philosophical system. It is applied field philosophy, assuming an individual as its microfield up to the society as its macrofield. It is that philosophical system which is applied by an individual in every walk of life, be it family, workplace or community. By workplace, we mean the profession undertaken by an individual to support himself and the society. Yoga builds up the entire personality of a human being suitable to handle simple and difficult situations of life. Personality refers to specific characteristic patterns of cognition, emotion, volition in an individual. These characteristic patterns identify an individual differently from another individual. Yoga makes an individual aware of his strengths and weaknesses. It empowers the individual to enhance, train, and harness one's outer and inner self to bring about a positive change in his life as well as his surroundings. It supports an individual to wipe out his weaknesses. Each individual has a distinct persona, the positive attributes of which need to be enhanced and groomed, and the lesser positive attributes need to be modified and improvised. Workplace requires good, pleasing personality, suitable attitude and confidence to shoulder responsibility, focused approach to execute action and leadership qualities wherever essential. He or she needs qualities like righteousness, morality, adherence to ethical values, rationality, equanimity, tolerance, etc. Yoga builds up the personality of an individual in this light, whereby he becomes an asset to the workplace and thereby an asset to the society in general. The term yoga and enjoining to work. It is well known that the term yoga is derived from the Sanskrit root yuja, which means to join, to connect, or to link, or to attach. Thus, it means connecting with the ultimate, or connecting all faculties of mind. Yoga yoga in its practical aspect is defined by Patanjali as restraint or suppression of mind. According to Vyasa, yoga stands for samadhi. Here the term yoga is derived from yuj, to contemplate, and it means samadhi. To achieve these suppressions of mental states, one needs to undertake repetitive practices, that is abhyasa, and non-attachment, that is vairagya. Mind possesses a vein of good as well as vein of evil and is capable of potentialities in either direction. So the mind has the inclination for good and evil. When it flows towards freedom down the path of knowledge, it flows into good. But when it turns towards worldly pleasures down the path of error, it flows into evil. Abhyasa helps to throw open the current of viveka and vairagya, which help to block the current of sensuous craving. The word yoga itself thereby harnesses good, positive attributes in an individual persona. A personality sharpened by abhyasa is vivekin. He or she will take up good, beneficial, ethical decisions in his or her workplace. Such a person will give his best to the work which he undertakes. Now we come to the definition of yoga as Chitta Vritti Nirodha. This sutra indicates a characteristic of yoga. It is restraint of mental states. The mind is made up of three factors, that is sattva, rajas and tamas, which are characterized by illumination, activity and inertia. Personality of an individual is influenced by these factors. When sattva, possessing of the form of illumination, is mixed with rajas and tamas, it becomes fond of power and objects of sense. The same very sattva, when pervaded by tamas, tends towards unrighteousness, ignorance, attachment and incapacity. Thus, in the present times, there are a lot of discussions going around professional ethics. So the definition of yoga in the Yoga Sutra focuses on building up a righteous personality, firmly upholding ethics. it will be difficult for such a person to fall prey to corruption and malpractices in his work. The other definitions of yoga, as mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, are yoga karmasu kaushalam or samatvam yoga uchyate, can also be explained in the light of professional requirement. Such definitions prove to be a guiding light for an individual to give his best at work. Next point is, it's not clear. Okay, yeah. So yoga and obstacles. So yoga has identified the obstacles that distract mind. There are 9 obstacles which cause distraction of mind. They exist in the mental states and do not exist in their absence. They are disease, disinclination of mind to work, doubt, or we can say indecisiveness, heedlessness, sloth, that is lack of effort due to heaviness of mind and body, self-indulgence, delusion, failure to attain the yogic plane, and failure of mind to remain firmly in that yogic plane. These distractions of mind, which are said to be the 9 blemishes of yoga, are also the 9 blemishes or obstacles in the path of an individual in his workplace. Thus, disease affects personality physically and psychologically. Disinclination of mind to work, indecisiveness, carelessness, laziness create rumbles in the personal and professional life of an individual. These are accompanied by pain, dejection, tremors of body and mind, and irregular breath. These 9 obstacles break a personality, and the above mentioned symptoms indicate a broken personality. How to overcome this such a situation? For this, one must practice purification of mind, which involves cultivation of friendship, compassion, joy towards joy, and forbearance. As a person proceeds, his mind becomes serene and focused, and he attains a state of steadiness. The yoga system is fully aware that, like the pursuit of every creative effort, the development of personality of an individual requires devoted and sustained application and is beset of obstacles. Apart from physical obstacles like disease, etc., there are mental obstacles also. A practitioner may be assailed with doubt regarding the worth of his efforts he has undertaken. These obstacles bring in the train of physical pain, body tremors, irregular breathing, etc. An effort of cleansing one's mind of its evil propensities is the cultivation of the habits of friendship, compassion, joy, and forbearance, respectively, towards meritorious and wicked. Thus, the mind becomes purified. Such a person becomes free from jealousy. He cultivates a feeling of joy towards those who tread the path of virtue. He rids himself of envy and malice. If he cultivates a feeling of forbearance, his mind becomes free from indignation. Thus, the Yoga Sutras explain the causes of broken personality. Such a personality will prove to be a liability to the institution wherever he or she is contributing. So, Yoga Sutras have given causes and also suggested remedies for the same. Such a person will definitely be disciplined, then will have commitment to work, tread the path of virtue, be the best with interpersonal relations, assist those in difficulties, and be balanced during trying times.
2 minutes more.
Yeah. So the next topic is yoga and human actions. So yoga classifies human actions as Shukla Krishna and Shukla Krishna. That is good, bad, or admixture of both. For a person is held morally responsible for not only what is done by him, but also equally for whatever is done at his instance, karika, or also done by his approval or connivance, anumodita. Yoga regards the remote cause and antecedent cause equally responsible for mishaps and problems at working place. And all human actions, whether good or bad, proceed from greed, hatred, and delusion, and depend for their performance on animate as well as inanimate instruments. In modern times, one may cause injury in a person in pursuit of self-interest, or out of hatred based on caste, color, or class, or under the mistaken belief that those who do not share one's creed or ideology deserve to be castigated. The black deeds consist in doing injury to others without any relieving goodness, and so proceed towards misery through down merit. Ordinarily, a person strives to seek pleasure and avoid suffering, and in the process does good to some and causes harm to others. These actions are then evil, black or black and white. Yoga. The last point, which is the Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga is a key to a successful professional life. Yoga recognizes merit and demerit as efficient causes which bring forth and strengthen respectively the good, that is sattvika, and the evil, that is tamasa qualities. As a safeguard against evil tendencies of a person, yoga enjoins the practice of abstinence or yamas and niyamas. Since there is a lot of discussion on yamas and niyamas, etc., so I'll be just discussing that in a gist. These 8 limbs of yoga, which involve yamas, niyamas, then asanas, that is meditational processes, breath control practices, that is pranayamas, control over sense organs, that is pratyahara, concentration, that is dharana, meditation, that is dhyan, and transcendental consciousness, that is samadhi. Yeah, last paragraph. Deal with the human mind and body and assist in realizing our highest potentials. Such a physically and mentally fit, spiritually elevated personality of an individual will be beneficial for his superiors, colleagues, and subordinates. Such a person will have full control over mind, and his mind will be pleased, that is chitta prasadanam. The nature of mind is actually agile or unstable. Once Yaksha had asked Yudhishthir when he was in exile, what is fleeter than mind? So Yudhishthir said, what is fleeter than wind? Yudhishthir said that mind is fleeter than wind. Even in Hanuman, we praise as having the speed of mind, manojavam. The meditative techniques advocated by yoga help in stabilizing mind. Focusing the mind on desired object is one way, or practicing non-tactile yoga, that is asparsha yoga, is another way for curbing the negative tendencies. Thereby, arousal of negative or sinful thoughts is curtailed. Such an individual attains the position of Sita Prajna or Muni as per Bhagavad Gita and the Mandukya Upanishad. He or she undertakes karman in an organization with a sense of detachment. Detachment does not mean owning up or not owning up, or irresponsibility or disengagement to work, or lack of result-oriented performance. It means work without a feeling of egotism or I-ness. It is complete dedication to work, putting work in the first place and then personal requirement or priorities afterwards. To conclude, thus integrated, dedicated, selfless personality will make the workplace a heaven to scale professional heights. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Madhavi. So, now I request Professor Ramki Ram, Director, NWRC, ICSSR, Professor of Political Science, and when I just had a word with him, he said he has a specialization in social anthropology and is also Dean of Social Sciences. So, sir, to you.
Thank you very much. My little knowledge about this historical subject is not based on the original text reading, and it is based on a few settings with the holy persons in different parts of the country. It's also based on regularly listening to some scholars who also practice holiness in their life. And one of them is Professor Dharmananda, Department of Philosophy, Punjab University. I had the opportunity to listen to him in the Center for Vivekananda Studies, where he delivered a series of lectures. And my thanks to them that I'm going to talk on these issues. When we talk about the Yoga Sutra, Patanjali comes in the 6th century BC. But yoga is much earlier, even the Vedas. When the yoga was coming up, we had various traditions, Shramana's tradition, Shramans. We have Ajivikas, Abhyanas, Charvat, they were competing with Jainism, Buddhism, especially the Mahavira and Buddha, the 6th century. But Jainism started from the 9th century BC onwards. So we have different schools who talks about the Jeev, what Jeev is. Especially we have those unorthodox schools which don't believe in the concept of world beyond this. So we have a epistemology of yoga. When we talk about yoga, yoga is quite similar to Sankhya. The difference between yoga and Sankhya is that in Sankhya we both have a god, in yoga we have a god. And the god which we have in the yoga is personal. It's a personal god. Purusha Vishesh, Patanjali. So thereby, we have to understand what is Purush, what is Prakriti, and what is Jeev. We all are Jeev. In us, there is a combination of two things. One is the Purush, the other is the Prakriti. But the Prakriti is independent of the Purush. Prakriti is unmanifested, unintelligent, uncaused, ever active. It is not from the Purush. It's a very, very interesting thing in philosophy. If it's not from him, the logic is that because the Purush is intelligent, the Purush is pure consciousness. From pure consciousness, unmanifested, inactive thing can't come. So he is the Bhokta and he is the Bhogya, the Prakriti. Now, if this is so, where does the yoga come? Yoga says that this Manush, this Jeev, which is a combination of Purush and a combination of Prakriti. मैं थोड़ा हिंदी में भी बात कर सकता हूँ
हाँ जरूर करिए
क्योंकि सब मेरे मित्र हैं जो
हाँ, सारे समझ सकते हैं।
फील करेंगे
इंतजार कर रहे हैं हिंदी का।
So the women be trying to say this कि दोनों बातें जब हम करते हैं वो कहते हैं कि इस जीव में बहुत कुछ छुपा हुआ है क्योंकि ये जीव जो है इसमें कहीं ना कहीं एक क्षमता है कि जोग मानता है क्षमता है संख मानता है क्षमता है कहीं ना कहीं वो न्याय विशेषता के साथ मिलकर बात करता है लेकिन इसमें जो जीव है पुरुष और प्रकृति के अलावा इसमें बहुत सारे एलिमेंट्स हैं इससे बहुत ज्यादा इसमें बहुत कुछ जो ऐसा है जिसके सुमेल से ये बना है तो इसमें कुछ ऐसे गुण हैं कि जो बहुत ही उत्तम है कुछ ऐसे गुण हैं वो बहुत ही नीच के हैं कुछ ऐसे गुण हैं जो बीच के हैं मैं एग्जांपल देता हूं आप बहुत अच्छे स्कॉलर हैं आप हर रोज मंदिर में जाते हैं हर रोज यज्ञ करते हैं हवन करते हैं ध्यान देते हैं लेकिन लोगों को गाली भी निकाल देते हैं सांप निकल जाता है उसको मार देते हैं कुत्ता अपने घर में आ जाता है उसके ऊपर डंडा मार देते हैं तो ये क्या है कि आप में तमस भी है आप बहुत तमस है गाली रोज करते हैं लेकिन आप अंदर से भय रखती हैं उस खुदा का सत्व ये बड़ी अजीब बात है बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है ये कैसे है ऐसा क्यों है आप क्रोध भी होते हैं दूसरे पल में आप जल की तरह निर्मल और जल की तरह बह जाते हैं पहले आप आत्महत्या करने की कोशिश करते हैं फिर आप बहुत बड़े संत बन जाते हैं पहले आप मर्डर करते हैं उसके बाद भर भर कर रोते हैं जाके पुलिस को कहते हैं मेरे को फांसी पे लगा दो तो कौन है इंसान वो ऐसा क्यों करता है इसका मतलब ये है कि इंसान में अशियाई है उसमें बहुत अच्छे गुण हैं उस इंसान को जरूरत है उन गुणों को आगे लाने की उन गुणों को बाहर लाने की ये तो जो कहता है सब कहता है लेकिन ये अजीबक नहीं कहता है वो कहता है इंसान अणु का बना हुआ है। जो अणु है वो ना तो विभाजन हो सकता है, ना एक अणु दूसरे अणु में घुस सकता है। जो अणु है वो साथ मिल सकते हैं। अणु जो है मिलकर इंसान को बनाते हैं, लेकिन जो अणु है वो प्री डिटरमिन्ड है, पहले से निर्धारित है। वो कोई कर्मा करे, पुण्य करे, दान करे, कोई विपरीत, कोई जो भी बुरा काम करे उसका असर नहीं होने वाला, वो पहले है। वो अणु जो है वो भगवान को मानता है जीव का, लेकिन जब उसका समय आएगा वो भगवान में लीन हो जाएगा। कुछ करने की जरूरत नहीं है। आपके अच्छे कर्म करने से हेवन नहीं मिलेगा, आपके बुरे कर्म करने से जहन्नम में जाएंगे, कुछ नहीं करेंगे। तो योगा क्यों करना फिर? वो ठीक हो गए नहीं, वो तो प्री डिटरमिन्ड है, आप ठीक हो नहीं सकते। तो हम उस स्कूल की बात नहीं करेंगे, आप उनको पढ़िएगा। ये बातें जो है ये लेक्चर की बातें नहीं आई, योग की, ये समझ की बातें, जीवन की बातें हैं। हम अच्छी बात है, हम ऑब्जेक्टिवली कर रहे हैं, बातें कर रहे हैं। इसके लिए आपको यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है, प्रोफेसर होने की भी जरूरत नहीं है। आप वैसे भी सीख सकते हैं किसी पाठशाला में जाकर संतों के साथ बैठकर। अब कैसे योग है? अब योग की बात है। योग कैसे है? योग ये कहता है, पतंजलि जी ये कहते हैं कि हमने जो दूषित भाव है, जो तमस वृत्ति है, जो राजस वृत्ति है, उसको कम करके राजस वृत्ति को आगे लाना है। तो कैसे लाई जा सकती है? उसके लिए हमने यम करना है, नियम करना है। कुछ ऐसी चीजें हैं जो हमने डू नॉट है। जो यम है वो नहीं करने को है, जो नियम है वो करने वाले हैं। हमने क्या नहीं करना है? हमने अहिंसा की बात करनी है, सत्य की बात करनी है, हमने असत्य को नहीं लेना है, हमने ब्रह्मचार्य को लेना है, हमने ये कुछ करना है। और दूसरा नियम में हमने क्या करना है? सोच करना है, सच की बात है, सोच क्लीनलीनेस हमने करनी है, हमने संतोष करना है, हमने तप करना है जिसमें हमें जो भी कष्ट होता रहे हम उसको दाव को याद करना है, स्वाध्याय करना है। हमने क्या खुद अच्छे लिटरेचर पढ़ के अपने आप को जानना है, हमने प्रभु को, ईश्वर को याद करना है। ये नियम है, तो योगा का पार्ट है। लेकिन ये पार्ट है, नियम हमने करना है, यम हमने करना है, फिर आसना की क्या जरूरत है? इसको क्या जरूरत है? हम ये कर लेंगे। तो पतंजलि ये कहते हैं, तो मैं लीडरशिप की अपनी बात कर रही है, तो कैसे लीडरशिप इंपॉर्टेंट है, योगा उसे कैसे सिखा सकता है, उस पर बिंदु रखूंगा। तो हमने क्या करना है? वो कहते हैं कि हमारे पास कुछ ऐसा कुछ है जिसमें 5 हमारे पास बहुत ही अच्छी टेक्निक्स है, जिसके साथ हम बॉडी को, जिसके साथ हम अपने ब्रीथ को एक सिंक्रोनाइज कर लेंगे। अगर इनको सिंक्रोनाइज करेंगे, इस बॉडी को इस ब्रीथ के साथ, फिर हम जो है डू एंड डू नॉट्स को फॉलो कर पाएंगे। अगर हम इस बॉडी के साथ इस बॉडी को ही नहीं अच्छी तरह कर पाएंगे तो वी वर नॉट इन ए पोजीशन, क्योंकि मैं जो सुनना चाहता हूं वो नहीं सुन सकता हूं, जो नहीं सुनना चाहता हूं वो भी नहीं सुन सकता हूं, क्योंकि मेरा कंट्रोल नहीं है। अगर मैं अपनी आंखों को बोलूं कि मैं आपको नहीं देखूं, जी मेरी बात नहीं मान सकते। अगर आप चाहें आपकी आंखों को बोले कि मेरे को मत देखो, आप नहीं कंट्रोल कर सकते। इसीलिए जो क्या करता है, जो ये हमारे जो अंदर की इतनी प्रॉपर्टीज है, एलिमेंट्स है, उसको साधना की तरफ लाकर सिखाने की कोशिश करता है कि हम उन चीजों को, उन विषयों को ग्रहण करें जिसके साथ हम मोक्ष की तरफ जाए। क्योंकि इग्नोरेंस कारण है सफरिंग का। इग्नोरेंस जो है वो सफरिंग का कारण है, इसलिए इग्नोरेंस को ठीक करने के लिए हमारे पास एक तरीका है कि हमने मोक्ष होना है, हमने लिबरेट होना है। इसलिए अगर इग्नोरेंस को हमने दूर करना है तो योगा इज ए वे टू रिमूव इग्नोरेंस। अगर योगा इज ए वे टू रिमूव इग्नोरेंस, टू गेन लिबरेशन स्पिरिचुअलिटी में, तो फिर दुनियादारी तो बहुत छोटी चीज है, उसमें तो बहुत कुछ हो सकता है। अगर हम इस बॉडी के साथ उस पार के, उस विश्व की, उस कॉस्मोस की नॉलेज पढ़ पाएंगे तो जहां पर हमारी लीडरशिप है, जो छोटी सी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, इसको क्यों ठीक कर पाएंगे। इसलिए योगा का जो महत्व है वो ये है कि वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू कीप अवर गोल वेरी स्मॉल, बट इफ वी कैन अप्लाई दैट योग लाइक ए न्यूक्लियर टेक्नोलॉजी, उसके साथ पूरा विश्व को हम उसका स्वाहा कर सकते हैं। लेकिन उसी टेक्नोलॉजी से हम इतनी बड़ी मेडिकल उपलब्धियां ला सकते हैं, इतनी बड़ी आंख की और इतने बड़े हार्ट की जो सर्जरी भी कर सकते हैं, उस न्यूक्लियर टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ हम जा नहीं सकते। तो ये जो नॉलेज है पतंजलि ने जो हमें दिया है, जो भारत के ऋषियों ने हमें दिया है, जो ऋषियों मुनियों ने हमें दिया है, इसमें बहुत कुछ सीखने को है। अगर हम सीखेंगे, वो टेक्स्ट मुश्किल भी है तो अब अवेलेबल है, हिंदी में भी अवेलेबल है, कुछ टेक्स्ट पंजाबी में भी अवेलेबल है, और संस्कृत की जो टेक्स्ट है वो तो अभी इतने अवेलेबल है, हम सोच सकते हैं। उसके साथ एक आपको लगेगा कि आप कुछ ना देखा हुआ, ना सुना हुआ, ना आपके सामने विचर है, उसको ढूंढ रहे हैं। एक दिन ऐसा आएगा, एक दिन ऐसा आएगा कि आपके जीवन में वो घटना घट सकती है जिसके साथ आप संसार को नहीं, संसार के बाहर को भी देख सकते हैं। दैट योग इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। तो इसलिए what we have to do now, we have to try to find it as a subject to understanding. At the same time, it's not only a subject of reading and learning, it's a subject of practice also. So इस practice को करने के लिए we need such sort of discussion seminars are very important. Thank you, madam.
चलिए, इस बहाने सारे लोगों के प्रति जिज्ञासा तो जागृत हो गई है कि योग क्या है। योग पढ़ना है, योग करना है, अनुभव व्यक्तिगत रूप से करना है या कहीं जहाँ काम करते हैं वहाँ करना है। और जब जिज्ञासा जागृत होती है तभी दैट वर्क्स एज अ मोटिवेटिंग फैक्टर टू गो अहेड in the direction of reading, knowing, and then understanding, and then actually practicing in one's own life, then at workplace. Not necessarily that all these things should happen successively, they can take place simultaneously also. So let us go to next presentation. I request Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai to give his presentation. And Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai, he was associated with Department of Philosophy for a project. It was a 5 years project on Arthashastra, and it was a study and actual implementation of Arthashastra in the field of leadership. So let us listen to Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai.
Namo Namaha, Namaskara. Thank you, ma'am. In the introduction, one important thing is that Dr. Shubhra Joshi, Madam Chairperson, is also my PhD guide and academic guru. So that's very important for most of us who have seen leadership in action. So in this particular paper that I'm presenting is Yoga in Leadership and Management. When we look at the word management, unfortunately, we only limit it to the MBA courses and in a corporate world. But I think if I were to ask you the first question, who is the best manager you have ever seen in your life? Mother. And this answer is common across the globe. So whenever I travel, I ask this question, who is the best manager you have seen? Is the mother. So the paper is going to present that management is not just about running an institution. Of course it is running an institution. Of not only the corporate world, but also an academic world, also a government institution, or maybe a small business setup that you can start. But then we say that what can an institution do and what can a leader do to make the institution or leadership and management better through yoga. As you know, with every speaker, there's a time limitation. I'm going to only focus on 3 parts of the paper as a crux of it. However, the detailed paper will be presented to you later on. So, while looking at the concept of introduction, most of the speakers have already spoken about it. The whole definition of yoga itself has been deliberated. So what's the definition? Among many of them, and one of the commonly accepted is the one that joins. That's yoga. So joining what to what? So the one that joins the lower to the higher. One that joins the limited to the infinity. So can an individual who starts or leads an organization make it a small organization to a large organization, from a small vision to a larger vision? And can yoga help us at that? So there are 4 levels of yoga that we can probably talk about. One is at the physical level, mental level, intellectual level, and of course spiritual level. I will limit myself a little bit to the worldly level. Because if you look at institution building, ठीक है मुक्ति हो गई लेकिन पैसा कितना बनाया? That's a corporate world balance sheet is very important. I'm not telling that the benefits of the yoga should be limited to your profits, but a person will be only considered successful, especially in the business world, if he has also made profits. So does it really help? And I have taken that in the first part of saying that the concept of yoga has been accepted in the corporate world in a big way, and have put some case studies and probably some actionables. So looking at some ideas about yoga, it is something that connects from the lower to the higher. But I have taken a primary text, which is a very popular text, which is the Bhagavad Gita. One of my friends over here, Milind Agarwal, there he is. His PhD, again under Dr. Shubhra Joshi Madam, is on Bhagavad Gita and management, so I don't want to tell more about it. Yeah.
He has already given his speech.
Exactly. So if you look at Bhagavad Gita, all the 18 chapters have yoga. But what is, for me, it is not the mentioning of the name like Arjuna Vishada Yoga or Sankhya Yoga. It's a journey of a person who is totally hopeless to the most victorious person. So that's the whole thing, that yoga can be practiced even in depression. So if you are absolutely depressed, of course you require a guide, a guru, a yoga guru will tell you. But the fact remains is that in the Bhagavad Gita, it has been accepted as a management book in various organizations. So I'm just going to talk about a few concepts which I felt is very important. It is an individual raising to a higher level. So can the leader or the manager also at every stage when he or she faces challenges take the path in front by something which we call as Vriddha Sanyogaha or a Jnani person. In Indian tradition, when you have a problem, you connect yourself to somebody who is higher than you. You don't face the problem alone. So that's what Sri Krishna does, he connects. And then we have a person who is totally depressed, a person who is a Vijayi. Few concepts again, Yoga Karmasu Kaushalam. Now that's something which is very interesting, that what is yoga? It is something that is excellence in work, and of course, Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. In management field, we also have this particular book which I'm working on, and rather ma'am will also speak on, the Kautilya Arthashastra, where he says there is a concept of Anvikshiki, which also contains yoga. If a person is able to think properly using the systems of Sankhya Yoga and Lokayata, he is able to take decisions which will be worldly and spiritually successful. So you have to be worldly successful as well as spiritually successful. So that's Vriddha Sanyogaha. Connecting yourself with Vriddha. And Vriddha doesn't mean only elderly people, but experienced and knowledgeable people. So that is also connecting to higher people. Pradipaha Sarva Vidyanam, Upaya Sarva Karmanam, that's it's a guiding light to higher. The last part of my presentation will focus on some case studies which we've been working on. I've been working very closely with the corporate world, in fact the academy industry partnership. So two people, or rather I would say two organizations, which has made the practice of yoga and meditation as a part of their culture and has directly seen an impact on their organization. The first one is a place that I come from, is Bombay Port Trust. If you know, it's one of the richest ports trusts of India, and it's got massive land. So I had an opportunity actually to listen to the leader, the chairman. He's an IAS officer, and he said one of the problems with Bombay Port Trust is 10,000 employees and 40,000 pensioners. I mean, that's absolutely something. And he says, what do I do about these 40,000 people? And he said, no, I want to look at these people as an asset to the organization, not a liability. And do you know what he did? We had two people already. You may be surprised, the name L&T itself is a foreigner, but it's a completely Indian company now. How many of you are aware of this, that today L&T is pitching global projects and construction, right from the Olympic stadium that's going to happen worldwide, the football stadium. So Indian companies have arrived. I'm a part of the training and development programs that they do, and they have a center in Pune in Maharashtra. It's a leadership development center of L&T. And can you believe they have partnered with Art of Living Foundation because they saw meditation helps productivity. This is directly reports from the corporate world. But the final thing which I would say is that one of the things about management is HR, HR is human resource. And one expert said, human is not a resource, human is a source. If you don't have human beings, you don't have organizations. But there has to be a yogi when I say yogi, not just a practicing yogi, who knows the right person for the right job. A problem is not people. So it's like ayogyam purusho nasti yojaka tatra durlabha. So one way of looking at it is that can you connect the right person to the right job? Sometimes we give the best job to the wrong person or the wrong job to the best person. So it's a very important challenge in leadership. Are we delegated and trained the right person for the job? So while concluding, I would say that what does finally yoga do? And there's the last part of Bhagavad Gita, the final shloka. It is that wherever there is Sri Krishna, who is a Yogeshwara. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna. What happens? What is the final conclusion? Are you successful or no? Yes, you are successful everywhere. Because at the end of it, the Yogeshwara, the great Lord of Yogi, when he meets a right disciple, an able student, and somebody who listens, Arjuna, there will be always prosperity. Shri and all this is going to be different. So I would say, as leaders of organizations, in whatever form, it could be physical, mental, spiritual, if we can practice in some way, 100%, the Bhagavad Gita has guaranteed that it will be successful. Thank you, namaskar.
I just would like to tell you that Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai is also author of 3 very famous bestsellers. One is Corporate Chanakya, another is 7 Secrets, co-authored by D. Shivanandan, who was Police Inspector General of Mumbai, and the third one is Chanakya in You, all the 3 bestsellers where he is talking about Chanakya and application of Chanakya. And friends, lastly, I allow myself to 5 to 7 minutes to speak on a connect between Arthashastra and Yoga Sutras. In the Department of Philosophy, I was fortunate enough to work with number of scholars and students who enriched my knowledge domain. They were working in different aspects of Indian philosophy. And the question they were addressing to is the content of quality life in some way or other related to present life. You know, Mumbai is a city of industries, corporate houses. People are not really much concerned about spirituality. They are totally engrossed in solving the life of this world, and that also the questions of today. Students of philosophy department also were not exception to this. And they made me think the relevance of philosophy in their lives. And the dialogue with my students over the years has really enriched me. Our project in Arthashastra, which we completed last 5 years, was one thing. And the courses which we were running in yoga theory and practice. And then we developed a postgraduate module, that also. And then I was happy to note when we started reading Arthashastra and implementing it in the form of a project. Implementing in the sense we selected not more than 15 to 20 students, taught them Arthashastra sutra by sutra. They were with us for 6 months, 24/7. We did not accept any single rupee from them. The criteria of selection was merit. Age limit was below 25. The only condition was that they should be with us 24/7, staying, accommodation facilities at the university, all hospitality of the Department of Philosophy, but not at the cost of university. we made an appeal to the corporate houses from Mumbai, and we approached with this proposal that if we really want better youth for tomorrow, let us work in the direction at least taking one step, and that is you provide us the funds and we will provide the better education to the students, and let us find whether when they are with us 24/7 and they give us feedback. It was field training also, practical training, interaction with again different corporate houses, then member parliament and member legislative councils and leaders of opposition parties and also thinkers in the political domain. So it was like an interdisciplinary study, but the main thrust was study of Arthashastra. I'm not going to give you the report of their project. Those who are working here along with Dr. Radhakrishnan, they are students of one particular batch. So you can see them working here. The point here is, Arthashastra begins with a proposal, and that is what Arthashastra is aiming at is good governance. And in the good governance, the sutra doesn't come in the beginning, but somewhere as the 5th or the 6th sutra, and that is the Rajarshi Vrittam. The leader, the goal of the Arthashastra is guiding the leader. And what is the nature of the leader? The nature of the leader is Raja Rishi. Now, Rishi is a person, we may say, having spiritual excellence, and the word Raja is used before that. That is a leader who is taking decisions and who is responsible for providing good governance. Of course, in Kautilya's Arthashastra, it's a king. Raja means a king, Rajan. So Rajarshi. Rajarshi Vrittam, it means that a leader who is enlightened one and who is responsible for taking decisions which will be beneficial to the society, and a decision maker who will always be guided by Viveka, that is, who will be taking decisions discriminating between what is right and what is wrong. That is the goal. Now, when I looked at it, I thought that, well, if we look in the context of today, Yoga Shastra is talking about excellence of human person, overall excellence, while conducting the activities in day-to-day life, while conducting activities at the workplace, while conducting activities at the outer level, while conducting activities at the inner level. And Kautilya is talking about a leader who is leading a society. Leading a society, the people of society may not be enlightened. The people of society may be expecting something, the conducive conditions for quality life, but they themselves may not be aware of it. But the leader is trained in such a way that he is going to enable the followers to provide such conducive conditions. This is how we looked at it, the concept of Rajarshi. And then we went in the backward direction, because actually Arthashastra begins with the components of training of a leader in good governance. And there are 4 components of training of good governance. The entire cluster is called Vidya Samuddesha. Vidya Samuddesha, it means the types of knowledges which are required for the enlightened leadership, and they are the Anvikshiki, then it is Trai, Varta and Dandaniti. Now I'll confine myself only to Anvikshiki. Anu Iksha, it means whatever is critically examined, and following that critical examination the decision is taken. So the enlightened leader is given training in critical examination, and the methods, actually they are philosophical schools, but I looked at it not only as a philosophy in terms of pramata, pramena, pramana, etc., but these are the ways of thinking where a leader is taught to think in decision making. It is Sankhya, Yoga, Lokayata. So Anvikshiki is narrated 3 times. It is Sankhya, Yoga, Lokayata. Now usually in Indian philosophy, Sankhya, Yoga, they go together. Sankhya Yoga is mentioned as one school. But here, Sankhya as the rationalists, Yoga as the spiritualists, and Lokayata as the empiricists. A person who is taking decisions in case of good governance, who is dealing with the problems this worldly, right now, present, has to take empirical approach. So, training in empirical thinking is there, but relying only on experience is not adequate. Reason also is required, and therefore it's clubbed together with reason. But it is experience, reason, and there is the domain of knowledge which remains beyond this, and that is spirituality. So the enlightened leader needs training in spirituality, not for moksha, but the enlightenment is for creativity, is for Duradarshitva. Kautilya mentions about Duradarshitva. A king has to have a Duradarshitva. That is, a leader actually should visualize what is going to happen next. It's the planning which is very important. The leader actually, in case of a battlefield, when the enemy attacks, and you are the people who are, you means people from Chandigarh, you take major responsibility in guarding the borders. So you will realize it. Good governance, a decision maker actually himself or herself will not go on the battlefield. But the paperwork, it means that seeing the situation in future, that is very important. And going beyond reason is required. And that is what Chanakya insists. And therefore, he includes Yoga Shastra as a part of the course curriculum of a leader. Now, I'm not going to talk about yoga because we have been listening to it. Very important thing is that a commentary on this Anvikshiki, that is Sankhya, Yoga and Lokayata, only just one line comes in a commentary, and that is about yoga, and it mentions only Pratyahara, then Dharana and Dhyana, iti Maheshwara Proktam. It means a commentator Maheshwara, and only 3 steps of the commentary, because Pratyahara includes the previous Bahiranga Yoga. And it is the Pratyahara which works as the connecting link between the Bahiranga Yoga and the Antaranga Yoga. And the 2 stages of the Antaranga Yoga, Dharana and Dhyana. A king or a leader of the good governance is not supposed to enjoy Samadhi because he or she can't afford to be in Samadhi. No, it's like Vivekananda, who was told by Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, when Swami Vivekananda was given the experience of Samadhi by Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and then he said, now you will not have this experience again because you will have to work for the betterment of the people, and therefore you will be with the people, you will work for them, and only in the last you will have that experience. So like that, Chanakya also says it is Pratyahara, then it is Dharana, it is Dhyana. So what we did is, in our course, when the dinacharya would start of our students, we always used to start with yoga practice. We never taught them Yoga Sutras, but we focused on the combination of the Antaranga, Bahiranga Yoga and the Antaranga Yoga. And also, some types of tasting. The food given was not up to the mark. Let us see whether students are capable of adjusting, whether they complain, and if the complaint is not listened, and then they were told to bear with it, whether they express their anger. Now all these are types of trainings which are given in police or in armed forces, but in our day-to-day life, in our academic training, and we were trying to find out whether Kautilya's Arthashastra will work in the modern days. And I'm happy to tell you that our students benefited a lot. They were all below 25, but they were not trained properly to coordinate between their body, mind and soul. वो किस चीज का नाम है? वो तो सुना भी नहीं है. क्या होता है? Because we are trained with this, that Atman is something which is to be thought about after say 70 or 75. अब तब तक रहे तो फिर बात ठीक है, फिर सोचेंगे क्या आत्मा नाम की क्या चीज है. It is not something which is to be whole. It is something only which is a part of our holistic personality. We don't live in bits and pieces. We live as a whole, person as a whole. And this is what both yoga and Kautilya's Arthashastra, they tell us. I only would like to say, 2 minutes more I will take. And I'll say that this yoga keeps coming in Kautilya's Arthashastra again and again, because a daily routine of a leader is given. And the daily routine of a king is a very, very hectic routine. And he is permitted to take rest, that is sleep, only for 4.5 hours in the night. And then 1.5 hours after his day schedule, after his meals. And in such a schedule, every time when the leader is advised to take baths and then prayer, immediately after that he is supposed to do Swadhyaya, where he has to revise his yoga technique. So it's not the case that once you have learned forever. No. You have to keep on revising it, and that is another thing is that I will refer to a very important sutra after Vriddha Yoga, Arishadvarga Tyagena, that is a leader is advised to control 6 enemies, and the 6 enemies are Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Mada, Moha, Matsara. That is, they are the hindrances, and these hindrances are due to the excess of rajas, and there are also hindrances which are due to the excess of tamas, but Kautilya doesn't speak about it. And I just gave a thought, and then when I looked at the routine, daily routine of a king, there Kautilya very explicitly says that Utsaha Shakti is one of the very important quality of the enlightened leader. Utsaha Shakti, that is, the leader should be full of energy. And energy means there should not be any laziness. And the type of Mudha Vrittis are not at all permitted. And what is again told here is that Mudha Vrittis are to be discarded completely, and the Ghora Vrittis, that is the Shadripus, also should be controlled. And Kautilya gives illustrations and says that these were very learned and very capable leaders, but they became prey to one of these hindrances or stumbling blocks, and they perished. And the next line is very important. They perished along with their people. They perished along with the kingdom. It means that a leader is not permitted to make a mistake due to which the people of the leader will suffer. So Kautilya is very clear about it, and that is why he very emphatically says that a leader has to be enlightened, and therefore the primary training which is to be given to the leader is how to think about. And also, not only how to think about, how to control oneself and how to inspire others and how to get oneself also inspired. Another very interesting thing I'll mention and I'll stop. What is mentioned is that the daily routine of the king, a king that is a leader, is supposed to see every day. He's supposed to see every day the military chief and then the cavalry and the horses and the chariots and the praja and listen to and then justice and all that. But one part of his daily routine, and which is made up of 1.5 hours, he's supposed to spend some time with his physician, who is Ayurvedacharya, and also his cook. Now I was thinking, why is it that the importance is given to cook also? And then, of course, Ayurveda, and ours is a lifestyle which is again is a holistic lifestyle. We think about ahara, vihara, vichara. So a king if that is a leader, if has to have Utsaha Shakti, then he has to have a combination, complete harmonious combination of body, mind and the self. And that is possible by ahara, that is possible by yukta vihara, nidra, mitahara, and what the king has to eat and not to eat, a physician and a cook in consultation with each other will decide, and the cook and the leader will be given that. I suppose the leader may not have given much choice to select whether he should have a gulab jamun or whether he should have a ras kadam. No. The point is that every day svadhyaya. You know, to be a leader is like wearing a crown of thorns. To be a guru is also equally very difficult task. And Yoga Shastra and Kautilya's Artha Shastra, both these treatises agree on this, and they say that unless you have enlightenment, you are not really appropriate to be called either the guru or rishi, or even Raja Rishi. You can be a teacher. Teacher it means that you are paid and then you train your students. But for a guru, you have to sacrifice. You have to sacrifice your pleasures, your comforts, and every time you will have to think about others. And therefore, I'll conclude, and this will be the last line. Praja sukhe sukham raja. That is what Kautilya says. So, Rajarshi and yoga. Thank you very much.
थैंक यू मैम. मुझे उम्मीद है मैम कि आज आपको अब नींद भी ठीक आएगी, और क्योंकि आपने लगभग टाइम पे कर दिया और आपने अपनी बात भी ठीक से कह ली. तो बस एक चीज रह गई, और आप सबका धन्यवाद, क्योंकि CII का ये जो सभागार है, ये आज से नहीं, मैं 15 सालों से देख रहा हूँ, ये थोड़ा ठंडा भी ज्यादा होता है. और मैंने कोशिश की कि इसको कम करवाएं, पर वो कहते हैं या तो बंद ही हो जाएगा या चलता रहेगा. तो आप लोग सब बैठे रहे थे अनुशासन से, इसलिए आपका भी बहुत धन्यवाद. बस एक चीज हमारी रह गई है जो हमें सम्मानित करना है पूरे पैनल को. उसके लिए मैं निमंत्रण देना चाहूंगा प्रोफेसर नंदिता को, जो हमारी यूनिवर्सिटी की, पंजाब यूनिवर्सिटी के सेंटर विवेकानंद स्टडीज के कोऑर्डिनेटर हैं, और इस आयोजन में पंजाब विश्वविद्यालय का प्रतिनिधित्व कर रहे हैं. उनकी वजह से ही हम लोग यहाँ पर हैं. तो सबसे पहले मेरा अनुरोध है कि वो हमारी आज की जो सेशन की चेयरपर्सन है प्रोफेसर शुभदा जोशी, उनको स्मृति चिन्ह से सम्मानित करें. और नेक्स्ट सेशन हमारा 2:30 बजे है, 2:30 पे. हमेशा लंच का ब्रेक 1 घंटे का इसी हिसाब से रखा जाता है. आधे घंटे की जरूरत 1 घंटे की होती नहीं, पर पता होता है कि पहले वाला सेशन ऐसे चलेगा. तो आप लोग 2:30 बजे दोबारा यहाँ पर आइए. और जिन लोगों की प्रेजेंटेशन, जो स्पीकर्स हमारे हैं नेक्स्ट सेशन में, उनसे भी अनुरोध है कि वो इस ब्रेक में ही जो हमारी सहयोगी हैं श्वेता, उनको अपनी पेन ड्राइव या अगर PPT प्रेजेंटेशन उनकी है तो वो उनको अवश्य दें. धन्यवाद नंदिता जी. अब हमारी जो अध्यक्ष हैं आज की, वो जो हमारे बाकी पैनलिस्ट हैं, जिनमें से ज्यादातर उनके स्टूडेंट्स हैं, जैसे डॉक्टर राधाकृष्णन पिल्लई, उनको सम्मानित करेंगे. डॉक्टर राधाकृष्णन पिल्लई को सबसे पहले, उसके बाद डॉक्टर पुष्पा नीलकंठन. ये सभी लोग मुंबई से हैं, जो मैंने सुबह आपको बताया था सेशन शुरू होने पहले. उसके बाद डॉक्टर ललिता नाम जोशी. ताली बजाते रहे आप, तो थोड़ी ठंड भी आपको कम लगेगी. अभी वैसे CII का खाना गर्म ही मिलेगा, तो ठंडक नहीं होगी.
फिर भी बहुत कुछ सीखती हूँ उनसे, तो स्टूडेंट नहीं कह सकते.
इसके बाद डॉक्टर माधवी नरसल है, ये भी मुंबई से संस्कृत डिपार्टमेंट से. और आखिर में प्रोफेसर रौनकी राम जी, जो हमारे पंजाब यूनिवर्सिटी के. इसके बाद जो अगला सेशन है, जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि 2:30 बजे तक है, 2:30 बजे शुरू होगा. तो आप सबसे अनुरोध है कि इसी संख्या में, ऐसा ना आप पे आरोप लगे कि आप लोग किसी और कारण से अब तक रुके हुए थे, तो आप सभी जो हैं वो वापस आए, क्योंकि उस सेशन में वैसे भी हेल्थ एंड योग जो कि मैंने आपको सुबह भी जिक्र किया कि